I'm Todd. I represent Griffin Health, and I'm excited to be here this year for Men Who Cook. Today we're at the Griffin Hospital Teaching Kitchen, which is in Griffin Hospital's Center for Healthy Living. And excited today, we're going to make red beans and rice. We're only going to make the red beans. The rice you can make on your own. If you need a tutorial, go to my food blog and I'll show you how to make that on the side. But before that, let me just say a couple words about TEAM and why I support TEAM. TEAM is a fantastic organization. It's a real jewel in our community. TEAM does so much to help so many different people who are in need. Their services range all the way from early childhood education to Meals on Wheels. And then my personal favorite, and the one that's nearest to my heart, is our food distribution event that we do with the local food pantries in the Valley. So for all that fantastic work and the great work at TEAM, I'm proud to be here today and helping out with this event. Okay, so we're just going to jump in. All right, so we are going to make red beans and rice. This is one of my favorite dishes to make it all the time. It's very simple, it's very easy. Takes a little while to cook, but that's just the process of kind of getting the beans to boil once you get your base set and once you get the ingredients going. But it makes for a good hearty meal, very good for you, and again, pretty simple, and the kids love it. So we have this quite often in my house, and I'll show you how to do it. So we've got a few ingredients that are kind of pre-prepared here. We have our onions, we have our celery, and we have our green pepper. So I can kind of show you those here. Okay, so onions, celery, and green pepper. They're all diced into small pieces. And the onions, the green pepper, and the celery are going to be the base for the dish. In Cajun-style cooking, they call that the Trinity, or sometimes they call it the Holy Trinity. It's kind of the companion to French cooking, where you have the mirepoix, and the mirepoix has the same things except for the green peppers. They use carrots. So this is just kind of a variation that they use in Cajun cooking. A lot of times when people make their Holy Trinity, they do equal parts onions, equal part celery, and equal part green pepper. I like to use a little bit more onion in mine, thinks it gives it a good flavor. So just in terms of about how much I've got that's cut up here, I have about 1 full green bell pepper. There is about 2 celery stalks, and there's about 1.5 onions that are cut up here. And there's probably about 2 times the amount of onions as there are celery and green peppers. So we're going to start with that first. We also have over here andouille style sausage. That's going to go into the red beans and rice. Now, this is fully cooked sausage. If I was using sausage that was raw, I would actually cook that first, probably take it out, and then put the Holy Trinity back there and cook that, and then add the sausage back in after. But because this is fully cooked, we don't need to cook that first. We'll start with the Holy Trinity. We'll add the sausage along with everything else right before we put the beans in. I've got some chicken stock. We have some oil. We have some thyme. We have some fresh garlic. And we also have some parsley. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to fire up the stove here. Let's see. So I'm just using a medium heat. Don't need to kind of saute the vegetables. One more thing I'll say really quick. When you're cooking this dish, like any kind of stew or any kind of soup, this is a great kind of pot to use. This is a cast iron pot that has an enamel coating in the inside. So really good for heat retention, gives you a really nice even distribution of that heat when you're cooking it, holds the heat really well, and the enamel makes it really easy to clean up. So just going to go ahead, we're going to throw a little bit of olive oil in this pot. Don't need to use too much. I'm going to get this thing a little bit hotter, and then we'll start with our vegetables. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start throwing these in. So I'm going to cook these. Turn this heat up a little bit, see if we can speed this up just a tad. And this Holy Trinity base, it's going to give the food a really, really, really nice flavor. You really can't use too much of it. So with this, also with the garlic and with some of the seasonings, it really cannot overdo it. All right, so we're just going to cook this. Probably going to cook it for about 5 or 6 minutes. We're just going to wait until the vegetables start to cook down a little bit. Wait until those onions look like they're starting to become translucent. And then after we get to that point, we'll be ready to throw some of these other things in there. All right, so while this is cooking, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut up our garlic, and we'll also cut up our parsley. So I'll just kind of show you really quick some easy ways that you can do that. All right, so this is started. Okay, so we have thyme, we have bay leaves, and we also have fresh garlic and parsley, which is going to go in there. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll cut the garlic up. Now I've got about 5 or 6 cloves of garlic that we're going to add to this. So with the garlic, we're just going to cut these into small pieces, and we'll throw those in. All right. We'll throw those in after this is mostly cooked all the way through. All right, we have our garlic cut up here. All right, we're just going to put that aside. We're going to let this cook a little bit more. And the reason we're actually not going to throw the garlic in just yet is because if you cook the garlic too much, it's going to burn, especially when you've got the garlic cut into small pieces like that. So you want to throw that in toward the end, right before you're going to throw in some of your wet ingredients. All right, so we're just going to keep stirring this. All right, now we're going to get some of the thyme. All right, now you can put the thyme in a couple different ways. You could either just put the entire sprig of thyme in there if you want to, right? Or you could actually take it off the sprig, and you could put the pieces of the leaves in there. And if you want to do that, it's pretty simple, right? But the one thing, which is just a little trick with this, all right? So you got your thyme sprig. You don't actually want to go with the leaves. You want to actually go against them. If you go against them, it'll just come right off like that, right? So we've got our thyme right over here, all set to go in, and then we've got our parsley. All right, so we're going to cut the parsley and get that ready to throw in there. And then just one note about cutting your herbs like this. All right, so with your herbs, an easy way to kind of get them nice and kind of like, cut up into small pieces is to take your parsley, and we're just going to kind of roll it. And after we roll it, we'll go ahead and chop it, and you'll see it'll put it into nice small bits that we can throw into our dish. All right, so it's going to take this. We're just going to kind of roll the parsley. All right. And after we get it kind of rolled up into a nice little tight ball, we'll just take this and just cut it up. All right. All right. All right, see that? Already got it into small pieces, and we'll just go the other way just to cut it a bit more finely. All right, all set to go. All right, so we have our parsley, we've got our garlic, we've got our thyme. That's all set. This probably just needs a couple more minutes. Now, another thing that people sometimes like to put into their red beans and rice is ham hock. All right, so red beans and rice is actually a pretty popular dish that people would make the day after they had a pig roast, or the day after they had a fresh ham. They'd have the ham hock left on the bone, and they would throw that into the red beans and rice the day after and make that dish. We're using the sausage. We don't have the ham today, but if you had the ham, you probably would throw that in at the beginning along with your sausage, especially if your sausage is raw. All right. All right, this is almost ready. It's almost ready. I'm going to go ahead and throw the garlic in now. All right, and we'll cook that garlic for a few minutes. Again, we don't want to overcook it, but it'll just be enough to kind of bring the flavor out. Only you could smell this through the video. All right, this is coming along really nicely here. All right, so we're just going to let that garlic release some of those flavors. Cook it for a few minutes. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually throw in the sausage too now. And I've got one package of andouille sausage in there. And the sausage is now cooking in there with the garlic, with that Holy Trinity, adding all those great flavors. All right, so we don't have to cook it too long. Again, the sausage, this is all pre-cooked. So it's not going to take that long to actually be ready for everything else to go in there. All right. I'm going to throw in some of the spices. All right, so we got some cayenne pepper. So if you like your food a little bit on the spicier side, you could use a little bit extra. I like it spicy, so we're going to use a little bit of extra cayenne pepper. All right, and not too much. All right. And then we've got our thyme that we cut up before. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to throw that thyme in. We've got our garlic that we cut up, which we threw in already. All right, and then the parsley is the last thing that we're going to throw in there before we get the beans going. All right, so we're going to throw that parsley in there. All right, this is doing really good. Okay, we are all set to add our beans and add our chicken stock. All right, so I'm going to throw my chicken stock in there. Now, different people, some people make their red beans and rice with water. I've tried that. Not bad, but the chicken stock definitely gives it a bit more flavor. So if you're going to try making this at home, I would recommend you try the chicken stock. I think it's the way to go. You don't want to throw too much chicken stock in there because your food might get a little bit too salty. Right? So usually what I'll do is put in 1 box of chicken stock. All right, we're going to put our beans in. All right, so here's our kidney beans. All right, now I soaked these the night before. So these are pre-soaked. They've absorbed some of that water. The beans have expanded some from all that water they soaked in there. All right, so that was done before, all kind of set to go. So we're going to throw this in. All right, great. All right, we got our beans in there. We've got our chicken stock. All right, and you can kind of see that we've got the stock and the other ingredients which are covering the beans. All right, now I do have some water here. I said before, you don't want this dish to get too salty. So the 1 box of chicken stock is probably going to add enough salt content to this. You shouldn't really probably need to throw too much more salt into it. Of course, you could salt and pepper to your personal taste and liking. But for me, 1 box of chicken stock and the salt that's in there is going to be enough for this dish. Now, we're going to cook these beans in this stock probably for anywhere from 1.5 hours to 2 hours. All right, so as these beans cook, they're going to start to break down. They're going to start to release the middle parts of the beans. And if you look at the red beans and rice right now, the red beans and the stock. The stock looks very clear. It's not thick. But the longer you cook this, the more the beans will start to break down, and this dish will start to take on a brown, almost kind of mushy consistency. All right, but that'll happen over time. And because we're going to be cooking this for 1.5 hours to 2 hours over a medium heat, this is going to continue to boil. The water and the moisture is going to continue to evaporate, so we're going to have to add moisture back into it as we cook it. I like to just add water to it so it doesn't get too salty. If you kept adding chicken stock and you cooked it down, eventually it would get very salty, probably a little bit too much. So what I do is I use the 1 box of chicken stock. I've got it cooking now. I'm going to bring it to a boil, and after it boils, we'll just keep adding water periodically as we cook it over the next 1.5 hours to 2 hours. And then after that, it should be all set to go. So I'm going to take a pause there. We're going to bring this to a boil, let it start cooking, and we'll keep stirring it periodically. Okay, we're back. We've been cooking our red beans and rice now for about 1.5 hours, maybe 2 hours. Depends on the consistency that you like. You can cook it a little bit longer if you like it a little bit on the thicker side. a little bit shorter if you like it to be not quite as thick. The other thing which you can do if you want to help speed that thickening process up some is you can take your spatula and you can actually mash some of the beans against the side of the pot. And by doing that, it's going to release some of the innards of the beans and help thicken the dish up, right? So that's always an option too if you want to have this whole thing go a little bit on the quicker side. So I've got my red beans and rice here. Great consistency, looks fantastic. We're ready to dive in and try this out. So I'm just going to throw some of this on the plate. All right, now normally you would serve this over rice. All right, so you get your rice in a bowl or in a plate. Go ahead and put that down first, and we would normally just put the red beans right on top of our rice. All right, but we're just going to go ahead and throw this on the plate so you can see how it came out. This looks great. All right, and you can see what I was talking about before in terms of the consistency. Right, it's brown. Right. The innards of the beans have released, so it's on the thicker side, and it's got a really, really nice look, and it smells delicious. We're all set to try this out.